Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Before you leave, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Sam and I had a lot of fun breaking down the quarterback class and talking about the teams that we think could take a quarterback in this class. Let me know what you guys think about this class down below. And Sam and I are going to start working on the mock draft very soon. That will be the last mock draft that I do before the draft begins. And on to the video. Okay, so best way to start this off is for us to name our top 5 quarterbacks in this draft. I'm going to let you go first, Sam.
Yeah, so I think this is an incredible quarterback class, and I think everyone knows that. Obviously, Lawrence is number one. I mean, he's been number one since he won the national championship as a freshman. I really like Justin Fields. I think he's QB2 for me personally, but I think Wilson is QB2B. I think Fields and Wilson are both great quarterbacks, and they're pretty much interchangeable. And I think that's the general consensus at this point amongst everybody looking at these guys. Me personally, I think Mac Jones. Fields. Yeah, Mac Jones is my QB4. I actually really like Mac Jones. I think he gets a lot of flack because a lot of people are projecting him to go number 3, and they're like, "Oh, Mac Jones shouldn't go number 3." But I think he's actually
a video on that, so I was one of those people.
Yeah, I think he's actually a good quarterback, and I like him at QB4. And then I have Trey Lance at 5. I think he's pretty good. I think he has some issues, but all 5 of these guys are going to be first-round quarterbacks most likely. So, I mean, a lot of times we're splitting hairs, especially once we get into this kind of this middle of the pack with Fields through Trey Lance. I think there's a lot of nitpicky things you can pick on, but I like Lawrence at 1, Fields at 2, Wilson at 3, Jones at 4, and Lance at 5.
Well, I agree with you on 1 and 2. Fields and Lawrence. Lawrence number 1, Fields number 2. I mean, I've been following those guys ever since they were high school recruits, and they were going back and forth as the number 1 or number 2 guy. I mean, those two. What more can you say? Those two are very talented quarterbacks. These guys are they're just very talented football players in general. Zach Wilson basically came out of nowhere this year. I have him as the 3rd best quarterback, but he's probably going to go number 2 overall to the Jets, which is fine. Yeah, once I saw film on Wilson, I understood why people are so hyped about him. And I'm actually going Trey Lance at 4. And the only reason I'm going Trey Lance at 4 is because of his potential. When you're in the draft, you're drafting for potential. And Lance really does have potential to be a great quarterback in this league. And Mac Jones is number 5. And I just want to reiterate this. I don't think Mac Jones is going to be a bad quarterback in this league. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. You know, Mac Jones did a lot of things at Alabama that you see NFL quarterbacks do on a weekly basis. So, yeah, all 5 of these guys are going to be first-round picks most likely, and all 5 of these guys could really make it in the NFL.
I completely agree. And I think the biggest thing to think about when it comes to these ratings is that these ratings aren't necessarily about what order they're going to go in the draft, because you can have Lawrence at 1 and Fields at 2, but Wilson's probably going number 2 to the Jets. I mean, that's the general consensus.
I mean, after that pro day, that was an amazing pro day that he had. I mean, I was watching the highlights.
It was incredible. But like when you have this ranking and you have Mac Jones at 5, there's nothing stopping Mac Jones from going number 3 overall.
Oh, no, there isn't.
I mean, so the rankings don't necessarily dictate what order these guys are going in. I think that's probably an important thing to touch upon.
I mean, we proved that in 2011 when Jake Locker went 8th overall over Blaine Gabbert, who went 10th. And now looking back at that, my God, the only quarterback in the first round was Cam Newton.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. It's so easy from hindsight. Because I remember the last time we did a video like this, it was the Mitch Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes draft. I mean, I was one of those people who had Mitch Trubisky at number 1, and looking back at it, oh, okay, well, he's the quarterback he was in college, and he wasn't that good. And then Patrick Mahomes was an electric talent, and look at him. He's the best quarterback in the league right now.
Because he got drafted by the best team. Remember, I had Watson number 1 in those rankings.
Yeah. So the rankings don't necessarily dictate the order, because we can always, I mean, you can always go back in hindsight and pick, oh, well, that was a dumb decision. Why would I do that? I mean, it's really easy to say that if you watch Patrick Mahomes light up the league. It's really easy to say, oh, well, he should have been QB1. I mean, coming out of the rankings, he probably didn't deserve to be QB1, but I mean, he was the best quarterback. So
even 2018 with those 5 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, and the 2
5
that got the most criticisms were the 2 best quarterbacks in the draft, and the 2 that were thought the most pro ready haven't really succeeded.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Josh Allen is a freak of nature. I think that's important. So is Lamar, absolutely. And Baker Mayfield kind of has taken a back seat in that draft class. I mean,
But I'll tell you what, the Browns made the right choice at number 1. Who'd have thought they got the choice right? I mean, everybody wanted Sam Darnold. And when the Jets got him at 3, everybody thought that was a steal. And it turned out, well, the Jets was not the best place for him. Shocker, I know. And yet Cleveland was the best place for Baker. They needed the right guy, and he was the right guy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's jump in and into this analysis. Let's start with Lawrence and Fields. So you can go ahead and start it out.
We're starting with just the 2 blue chips. I mean, these 2, they went back and forth as number 1 and number 2. These 2 both grew up in Georgia. I think they went to high school like 20 miles within each other.
Yeah, they've always been competing against each other. So
we're going to start with Lawrence. I mean, what more can you say about Trevor Lawrence? He took over the starting job his freshman year, took it over from Kelly Bryant, and he led at Clemson to a national championship in his freshman year, and then 2 more college football playoff appearances later. And he's the best quarterback in this draft. He really is. I mean, everything about him is just above average. He's 6'6". He's got a cannon for an arm. He's got great mobility for a guy that's 6'6". I mean, you don't see that too often. You really don't. The only thing that I think he should work on a little bit is going through his progressions a little bit more. I saw him staring down receivers a little more often than he should have, and a little bit of decision making. He's got to make a little more. I mean, he's got to make better decisions, but it's not that bad. It's just a little bit of nitpicking, but there are a few things that he needs to work on. But I mean, Jacksonville takes number 1 overall. I would expect him to be a day 1 starter.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Lawrence has been QB1 since he won the national championship as a freshman. And I mean, every single person watching kind of fell in love with him and was like, oh my God, Lawrence is the best quarterback ever. He's infallible. But then once we started like looking at his film, we're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's not perfect. But I mean, what college quarterback is perfect? I mean, he has an incredible arm. He's got pretty good accuracy. I think that's probably one of his knocks is his accuracy. He can overthrow. He can misthrow sometimes, especially when he's getting pressured.
Rather a guy overthrow than underthrow.
Oh, absolutely.
You can always teach control. You can always teach control, but you can't teach arm strength.
Right, exactly. He works really well in the pocket. He can move really well. And I think at the next level, I think his athleticism might hurt him a little bit because I don't think he's going to be because he is sneaky athletic. I think that's probably a good way to describe it because he can all of a sudden kind of just outrun a linebacker. But I don't think that's going to work as well in the NFL.
You know, that reminds me. Yeah, you know that reminds me of a little bit. It reminds me of when the Ravens had Joe Flacco because they're the same height. Flacco had sneaky athleticism too, because there were times when he would get out of the pocket and actually run for a first down. So, little bit similar to that.
Right. I think he is a really good athlete. It means he can move the ball really well. I think another knock on him is his RPO offense that he had in college. Clemson ran a lot of RPOs. They did a lot of behind the line of scrimmage action, a lot of short throws, quick decisions. I think that helps him and hurts him because you've seen that he can make a decision in a snap of a finger. But it also hurts because at the NFL, you're not running an RPO as much as they did at Clemson. So I think there's going to be a pretty heavy adjustment going from that offense to an NFL offense. And again, I think another knock on him is I've touched on it a little bit. He's not the most accurate. But when you're having a class like this, it's really easy to say he's not the most accurate when you have a guy like Justin Fields who can put the ball anywhere on the field and with good precision. He's still a very accurate quarterback. Don't get me wrong. And I think there is going to be an adjustment period for him getting to the NFL. He's day 1 starter. And I mean, that doesn't mean he's not going to struggle. He could struggle. But he can do anything you ask of an NFL quarterback. And that's why he's QB1.
All right, moving on from Lawrence to his 2018 counterpart, Justin Fields. And keep in mind, when these two were coming down, Lawrence was the top pro-rated quarterback. Fields was the top dual-threat quarterback. And again, they were split in 1 and 2. At one point, Lawrence was number 1, and then Fields took over the number 1 spot. Then Lawrence finished off as the number 1 player. And with Fields, I mean, I really, really like Fields. I have liked Fields since I saw him in QB1, and I just saw the leadership that he had, the fact that he's a humble guy. I mean, this is somebody that was so shocked when he got moved up to number 2 in the rankings. I mean, this was somebody that was going to go to Mercer, I believe, until he started getting the big offers. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just crazy to think about. It really is. But
Right.
how he is on the football field. First of all, Justin Fields may be the best quarterback out of the pocket. He's got terrific athleticism. And keep this in mind, he ran a 4.4 at his pro day. Not a lot of quarterbacks can do that.
Not a lot of quarterbacks can do that.
But he's not a guy that's just going to run all the time. This is somebody that will work within the pocket. This is somebody that's extremely accurate. As you said, if you watch film on Fields, he just knows where to place the ball every single time. This guy goes through his progressions a lot more than people realize, because you can just see him trying to find somebody open, trying to see what's out there. But I think that's a knock on him too. He's got to learn when to tuck it and run. He's got to learn when to just throw it away, live to fight another down, got to learn when to get out of the pocket. That's something that he needs to work on. Of course, it doesn't help that his offensive line kind of didn't help him out, especially in the Northwestern game. I think in the Northwestern game, he got very hurt by his offensive line. I mean, he got rushed a lot in that game, and his receivers didn't help him out either, because there were at least 3 passes that were dropped in that game.
If I'm not mistaken, he also was dealing with a thumb injury in that Northwestern game as well, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly. I think he had a better game than people give him credit for. And the 2 interceptions were not his fault. One was just a great play by the defensive back, and the other, the wide receiver ran the wrong route. You could tell that right off the bat.
Yeah. So when it comes to Fields, I mean, as a prospect, I think he's absolutely electric. I think any other draft class, he's first overall, no questions asked. I mean, his arm is incredible. He's got a really strong arm, incredible touch. He's incredibly athletic. I think a lot of people see him, he ran a 4.4 and they're like, oh, that's a good running quarterback. No, he's a quarterback who can run. He works really well in the pocket, and I would argue he's better in the pocket than he is on the run. It's just he doesn't have quite the pocket footwork that other quarterbacks have, that's not a really big of a knock, because that's really easy to work on.
And it's Ohio State. I mean, when's the last time you saw an Ohio State quarterback with good footwork in the pocket?
Right. When he does run, I think sometimes he sets himself up for some big hits, and you saw that in the Clemson game. He took that shot in the ribs, which, I mean, we're not going to get into the targeting rule. Me as an athletic trainer, I think that's a good call, but he sets himself up for some big hits sometimes. But I mean, he goes out of bounds at times. He does go down at times. So I don't think it's something to worry about. When it comes to that slow processing knock on him, I kind of hate that a lot, because I think it takes out a lot of context in what he does. Because Ohio State, they run option heavy route trees. So a lot of the times you have to wait for the receiver to make the choice on the route that they're running. So you can't necessarily anticipate those throws, because if you think he should go one way and the receiver goes the other way, now you're airballing it where the receiver's not. So a lot of times you have to wait for those things to develop, and that kind of offense demands patience. Although he does seem just a tick slow when he's making the decision to throw. And I think that's probably the issue with the slow processing, is he doesn't throw it on the break of the receiver. He throws it after the break, which in NFL, those windows get a lot tighter.
That's coachable. That's the thing.
That's absolutely coachable. Yeah.
And this guy is willing to learn. You could tell that this guy's willing to learn.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think he's got a very high football IQ, and you can see it on film. I mean, there was one play in a game. They were going to set up a bubble screen. I think it was a Northwestern game. Northwestern had covered the bubble screen, so he decides to take off and run. He gets the first down.
Yeah, and I think another thing is it's really reps, because you notice I watched the Indiana game, which was one of his rougher games this season. and then I watched the Clemson game in the college football playoffs. There's a total difference in those two games, one at the beginning of the season and one at the end of the season. I mean, that first game really against Indiana really exemplifies some of those knocks on Fields, is that maybe he gets the ball out a little slow. He can make some bad decisions at times. He's a little iffy when he's moving, that kind of thing. But then you go to the Clemson game, and the very first play, you see him middle of the field, lateral of the field, and then he goes to a dump off. I mean, he's going through his progression, and you just see that over time, and it just means he needs more reps. So I think the more he plays, the better he'll get. So it's really all rep dependent, and I mean, he's going to be a starting quarterback, and he'll get those reps.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Zach Wilson, the overachiever. He really was. He was
Absolutely,
an overachiever at BYU. He came out of nowhere this year, and now he's projected to be the second overall pick. Why don't you start the topic on him?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing about Zach Wilson is he is really just an electric quarterback. He is really athletic. I think he's not quite in the same category as Fields, but Fields is in a category of his own. But he's definitely the second best athlete out of these quarterbacks. He has an incredible arm. He can really just sling it. He has a lot of velocity on his throws. He can really launch the ball too. So the issue is he played at BYU. He had a fantastic offensive line going against subpar talent. So you don't really see him against pressure, but when he is against pressure, he does a really good job of working through it and either escaping from the pocket, taking off, or he does keep his eyes downfield, is what I saw a lot. He moves really well. I mean, he has all of the athletic intangibles from a quarterback that you want. I think when it comes to his knocks, I noticed his deep ball dies a little bit, which is kind of strange for a guy who has such a strong arm. You see not receivers having to slow down to catch the deep ball, but I think it's more so he doesn't lead the receivers enough because he has the arm to sling the ball 65, 70 yards. It's just when he throws it, a lot of times I think it's probably an accuracy thing, is that he's really accurate and he's not overthrowing the receiver, which sometimes gets him in trouble because now the receiver has to go up and make a contested catch, even if they have a step on the defensive back.
And that can also get a receiver hurt. We've seen that happen a lot.
Absolutely.
The receiver got hurt over stuff like that.
Absolutely. And it's not an issue on his arm strength because he has the arm to make those throws. I think it's just
he's too
a rep thing
again. You're trying to say he's trying to be too accurate.
Yeah,
I worry about trying to throw it and hitting the guy in stride.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to say too accurate, but that's kind of where I'm going with it. Because he has the arm to make the bomb of the throws, and it's not that that's an issue. It's just he's not putting the ball necessarily out for the receivers to reach out and get it in stride. He also, I noticed he doesn't throw over the middle a lot. He avoids the middle of the field, which I think is something that you can't do in the NFL. But it just
you need the middle of the field in the NFL. I mean, the middle of the field can be a quarterback's best friend because corners and safeties can focus on the outside. You got that middle, especially the mid part of the field that can be left wide open a lot, and it gets one, you get an easy completion, but two, receiver can get yards after the catch. We've seen that happen a lot in the NFL, so you can't be afraid to throw it over the middle.
And the other thing that you miss when you don't throw over the middle field, you don't see how he can work a ball in between levels, in between the linebackers and the safety. And you don't see how he can kind of zip the ball into those zones that people with strong arms really can take advantage of. But I think that also shows how powerful an arm he has, because he really is working with the outside part of the field, which you need to have a good arm to do that. And in college, he can work across the field and all that kind of stuff. He has a great arm. I think it's just the scheme that he was in kind of put some deficiencies in his game. And I think all of that's going to change once he gets into a different scheme.
One knock I did have on him, I saw some bad decisions that were made. I saw him throwing into double coverage a lot. I saw him throwing into tight coverage a lot. He's got to work on making better decisions, looking at the film and seeing when to throw it and who to throw it to. He's got to start working on that. And he did stare down receivers a lot more often than he should have. So he's got to be careful of that. But Zach Wilson, yeah, I am a believer he's going to be the second overall pick. I think we all know this.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to projecting how a quarterback's going to do from college to NFL, I think a lot of people think that they're going to become totally different players once they get to the NFL, but they're not at all. Because when you think about like what a quarterback did really well in college, you think about that's what they do in the NFL. Like you look at Lamar Jackson. He does throw a ball well. He runs really well. And you saw that at college, and he's doing the exact same thing. It just takes time to adjust to different speed. And Zach Wilson, I think, dominating his level of play that he did, I think all of that stuff translates to the NFL, even if it is a lower competition. And I think he's going to be a good quarterback.
All right, we move from an overachiever to the small school standout, Trey Lance out of North Dakota State, the same school that produced Carson Wentz, the second overall pick in 2016. One thing that stood out to me, and this was the first thing that I saw in the first play, this guy has a laser. He can just fit that ball. I mean, that ball goes fast with him. And it's both a good thing and it's both a bad thing. It's a good thing because on deeper throws, that means it's getting to the wide receiver quicker than the defensive back or even a linebacker is going to be able to stop it. But it's also a bad thing because on those short throws, you're going to be hurting a receiver, and that's going to lead to some drops. So for me, it's a touch thing. He's got to work on his touch a little bit. And once he does that, then I think you're going to see him complete a lot of passes that maybe a lot of other quarterbacks aren't. This guy is extremely talented and maybe the best runner out of this class because he ran a lot at North Dakota State. They had him on like quarterback draws a lot. And he is very raw. All right. I'm going to say it. He is very raw, but if a coach is willing to work with him, and if you give him time, he is not a day one starter. He's probably not even starting his first season. Not at all. This guy is going to need a Patrick Mahomes redshirt season. He's going to need it. And another thing with Lance, he's got a strong arm. I mean, you see that on film. He's got a very, very strong arm. So he's going to hit that deep pass a lot. And accuracy, does need to improve on that. Needs to work on his footwork. Did notice that. Got to work on that.
I think the footwork is – oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Okay. I think the footwork is bigger than the accuracy because I think you notice a lot of times when the footwork breaks down, that's when the accuracy breaks down. Out of the five, he is the least accurate of the five. But the biggest thing about that is he doesn't put the ball in bad spots. He doesn't throw interceptions. He threw
one interception his entire college career. He did not throw an interception in 2019. No one does that.
Yeah.
So
and I think
he takes care of the football. He has his limitations, but he does take care of the football. And that's why you can work with him on this stuff because, again, this is another guy that probably has a high football IQ. And when you're a quarterback, you have a high football IQ. That's about 40% of the work right there.
Right. And I remember reading that he, as a freshman in NDSU's offense, is making reads, making audibles, making adjustments and things like that. And you don't see that from 18-year-olds. So he has the football IQ to succeed. I think he has the arm to succeed. He's got an incredibly strong arm. He is very athletic. I see PFF has him compared to Taysom Hill with arm talent. And I think that's a great comparison because he has a stronger arm. He is more accurate than Taysom Hill, which I mean, everybody's more accurate than Taysom Hill. I like that comparison a lot. I think it fits really well. His footwork is an issue. I think he also has a little bit of an issue with his throwing mechanic because his arm does dip. He has a little bit of a windup with that, which I think if the rush is coming from behind and he doesn't know it, that ball's coming out 10 times out of 10. What else did I want to say about him? He does need to sit for a year. I think if Atlanta is looking for a quarterback, Atlanta would be a great fit for him because Matt Ryan isn't leaving in the next year or two. So it gives them some time to develop, and then Atlanta gets to build on that. But I don't think Atlanta's going quarterback, to be honest.
I have another team that might be a really good fit for Trey Lance, and this might sound a little weird. What about Detroit? They just got Jared Goff. He's going to be their quarterback this year. Detroit could take Trey Lance.
I think so too. I think that's a good fit, and I think sitting behind Jared Goff is a great idea. But again, I think the general consensus is he needs to sit for a little bit and develop. But he has things that you want in a quarterback. He has a strong arm. He doesn't turn the ball over, which is one of the biggest things, because a lot of times that comes from decision making and football IQ. And those who turn the ball over a lot, i.e. Sam Darnold, when they do it in college, they do it in the NFL. And when you do it in the NFL, then you lose your job and you get traded for a second-round pick despite being third overall. So
dang.
The lack of turnovers is probably my favorite thing about him, and his athleticism. So I think he's good. I have him as QB5 because I think Mac Jones is a better pro-ready prospect, and I think he can fit in and start if he has to and do pretty well. He needs some development with Trey Lance, but I think he's a good prospect.
And speaking of Mac Jones, now we get into the quarterback on the most talented team and maybe the most patient quarterback in this draft, because he had to wait 3 years for his time to shine. And boy, Mac Jones really shined at Alabama this year. Now, again, I think he's a first-round pick, but I think it's a little high for him to go third overall. But he's the most pro-ready quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback in the pocket. And while he doesn't have the mobility that the other guys have, he can get out of the pocket. It's just that he's not going to do it every single time. So mobility, a little bit of weakness, but not all quarterbacks need to have mobility. Look at Tom Brady. Just won another Super Bowl. So
yeah,
it's a little knock, but it's not too crazy. Now, his ceiling, it's not as high as any of the other guys. But his floor, maybe the highest in this draft, or second highest. You could say Lawrence has the highest floor, but I'm going to go Mac Jones has the highest floor in this draft. Insanely accurate, better arm than people give him credit for. Worked in Alabama's office, so he knows how to make progressions. And again, he took over from Tua Tagovailoa, who was the 5th overall pick, and still put up really good numbers. Now, another thing that we have to talk about, he had maybe the best collection of talent on any team. I mean, he has 2 wide receivers that are most likely going in the top 15. Maybe both of them go in the top 10, and Waddle and Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman.
And which is unheard of for a receiver.
Huh?
Which is a receiver winning the Heisman is unheard of, which just speaks to his talent.
Exactly. And then when Waddle went down, you had what's his last name? I forgot his last name, but you had another receiver step up. You had
It's Alabama.
Huh?
It's Alabama. They produce quality players at every level.
Great offensive line and great running back. But that tells you that he knows how to work with talent. I think that's also a very positive thing. If a quarterback knows how to work with talent, that's a great thing to have. I mean, look at Donovan McNabb and the talent that he had at wide receiver. He only had one good receiver when he was with the Eagles, and that was T.O. Well, until they got Jackson and Macklin later in his career, but by then it was too late. So you know how to work with what you have? That's pretty good. So Mac Jones is definitely a first-round pick, and he's definitely a guy that I could see start day one, be on the all-rookie team, make a few Pro Bowls, and I see him as a 10-year starter. I can definitely see him as a 10-year starter. Now, is he ever going to have the ceiling of the others? No. But is a team going to make a mistake by drafting him? Oh, heck no. If he turns out to be a 10-year starter, then yeah.
That's good every time. I think the best way to describe Mac Jones is a jack of all trades, master of none. He has a good arm, not a great arm. He has good accuracy, not great accuracy. He's great in the pocket. He has great pocket mobility, but he's not mobile. So he's he's okay with his athleticism. I think that's kind of it all depends on where he's going. But the athleticism, I don't think it's necessarily a requirement for playing quarterback. It's great to have, especially in today's NFL. But how many quarterbacks in the NFL are athletic? It's probably about a third. So you have 2/3 of quarterbacks in the NFL who don't really move all that much. I think Mac Jones definitely is somebody I could see as a day one starter and playing really well. He does have Jalen Waddle, and he does have Devonta Smith, who bailed him out when he doesn't put the ball exactly where it needs to go. And when you have the talent like he had, I think it kind of masked some deficiencies. But I think he's a good player, and I think just his record. Being 11-0. Granted, it was COVID year, but being 11-0, it is also Alabama, and winning a national championship. That's got to count for something. I think he's a great quarterback. And I think the Kirk Cousins description and the comparison to him is
the perfect description.
I think it's perfect. It's used as a slight against him, but if you think about Kirk Cousins, he's an overachiever.
He took the starting job from the 2nd overall pick. How many guys can do that?
Kirk Cousins is a starting quarterback. He's going to be a starter no matter where he goes. He may not be an MVP guy. He may struggle to get to the big stage, but he's a starter who can get you to the playoffs, and then who knows what happens there. Mac Jones is a good quarterback, and I think a lot of people are mad that Mac Jones is projected 3rd overall, but I think he's a good quarterback. I really like a fit in Washington for him. I think Washington 49ers, or not Washington 49ers, what am I, an idiot? I think the Washington football team would be a great fit for him because they really just need a quarterback. They just need a quarterback, and that team is ready to make a deep playoff run. They have a good young defense. They have a lot of talent on offense. Mac Jones would fit in really well with them. And I think 9 is a good spot for him to go too. I don't think he should go 3 because I think there's too much talent at quarterback in the top 3 of these guys that Mac Jones deserves to be taken higher than them. But who knows? He does work really well in a play action offense, and you see that at Alabama. His play actions are really good. And he fits kind of that mold that Kyle Shanahan looks for. And when a team trades up, they trade up for a guy in mind. They're not trading up, maybe if this guy falls, we can take him. Maybe if that guy's there, we'll take him. No, you trade up. We want 3 because we want this guy. So I think if Mac Jones is the guy, I disagree that Mac Jones is better than Fields and should go higher than Fields. But, Mac Jones is a good quarterback.
Look, if it all works out, then I'm eating my words. But
right.
I think all 5 of these quarterbacks definitely have the potential. And if all 5 of these guys end up becoming very good quarterbacks in the NFL, that's just a great quarterback class. Last time we had a draft that had 5 quarterbacks that were really good was probably 83. Yeah. 3 Hall of Famers, a guy that led the league in passer rating, and another guy that went to the Super Bowl.
I think this is an excellent class, and I think, I would say this is an excellent top 5. I think the quarterback class, and this is kind of a good segue, I think the quarterback class kind of drops off after Trey Lance. I think there's guys who can do something, be career backup or something like that, but I don't think there's a ton of
potential starters
talent.
Down the
line. Right. So moving on to that, who is your sleeper of this class?
Ooh, who's my sleeper of this class? Well, my sleeper, I'm actually going to go Kellen Mond from Texas A&M. I think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. He's another guy that I've been following since his freshman year. I think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. If he goes to the right team and develops, he could be a starter within 2 or 3 years. And a team that I think could be a really good fit for him is the Patriots. If the Patriots don't go quarterback in the first round, I still haven't taken Mac Jones, but if they don't go that route, if they go a different route, and Kellen Mond's there in the second round, they could very well take him. I think he'd be a very good fit for what Belichick does.
I actually really like that, him going to the Patriots in the second round. I agree with you. Kellen Mond, I think, is my sleeper of this class. I think he's an athletic guy who can shine at times, but he also be bad at times.
Yeah. Yeah, with
So
him, it's a consistency issue, but I don't know how much of it is stuff that can be worked on and how much of it is just who he is. But I think
right.
there's a lot to work on with Kellen Mond. I think he's got potential to be a very good starter. I think he will.
I would agree. I think Kellen Mond outside of this top 5 is probably my favorite. I haven't dove too deep into him, so I can't speak too much on it, but I do like him from what I've seen and what I've read. But then
Okay, here's the second, and here's our second one. The biggest wild card in this draft, the quarterback that could literally go anywhere outside of the top 5, and I think it's Jamie Newman. Because Jamie Newman, he should not have opted out, then gone to the draft. He never should have done that. Because at Wake Forest, he had a lot of potential. Then he goes to Georgia, and everybody's thinking, oh, if he has a really good season against this type of competition, he could get himself into the first round. Well, that doesn't happen. He opts out. He decides to enter the NFL draft, and he could be taken anywhere from the 3rd round to go undrafted. That's the whole thing. Jamie Newman really made a bad decision, and it could cost him.
I would agree with you. I think he definitely had a lot of buzz before this whole season. As a guy who could rise up to that level of being a good prospect, but then he opted out and he misses this season, and then he decides to declare for the draft, and then he didn't do well at the Senior Bowl. So, he, from what I've seen of the Senior Bowl, he played bad in the game. He wasn't great. He struggled at practice, and I think that with the decision of not having any film in this past year, could make him go in the 2nd round. It could make him go 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round undrafted. He really could go anywhere. I think that's a great description. A great guy to think about. I think a guy who could kind of move around a bit is Kyle Trask.
Oh yeah,
because Kyle Trask is seen as QB6 in a lot of rankings, but I don't think he's that good of a quarterback.
He's got a lot of limitations that you could see at Florida. I mean, he was a great fit for Florida's offense, but in the NFL, right. I just don't know if he's going to make it. I think he's a career backup.
Right. I would agree with you. And I think a career backup is probably his ceiling. I mean, he struggles with a lot of different things, and a lot of people have him as number 6, but I could see him falling into the 4th round, falling even further than that. I think
Mod's QB6. I think Mod's QB6.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Trask is going to be an interesting guy. I think I think he could fall a lot in this draft. Maybe not to significant day 3. Maybe he'd get picked in 4th round. I would have a hard time seeing him go any later than that. But when I think of like his, at least not necessarily comparison, but when I think of his projection, it reminds me a lot of Matt Barkley, who was, a lot of people saw him as like the best day 2 quarterback, and then he ends up going in the 4th round. So I think that could be something that happens.
And he ends up becoming a career backup.
Right.
Remember the season before, he was thought of as a 1st round pick. And
yeah, he thought it was 1st overall.
He was going to do more of the same, and he showed his limitations.
Right. And I think that's probably what's going to happen with Kyle Trask, is he's seen maybe as the best of the rest, maybe number 2 of the rest. But I could see him falling in the draft.
All right. That was us talking about the quarterback class of this draft. And before we go, who do we think is taking a quarterback besides the first 3 picks? Who do we think could take a quarterback? Let's start within the top 10, the rest of the top 10, and then let's move to later in the draft.
I think that's a great question. I think Atlanta is in a position where they can take a quarterback, especially one that needs to develop, because they can't do anything with Matt Ryan because of his cap number.
Yeah, Trey Lance, I've had him going to Atlanta in my first 2 mock drafts. I don't know if I'll still have him going there, but Atlanta could basically do whatever they want with that 4th overall pick. If they want a quarterback, they can take a quarterback. If they want to take a guy like Kyle Pitts, they can take Kyle Pitts. If they want to trade, they can trade.
Right. I think Atlanta could take a quarterback. I don't see them necessarily as having to take a quarterback.
I mentioned Detroit. I think Detroit, there's a I'm going to go a better than a 50% chance that they could take a quarterback at 7, especially
Detroit could.
especially at the value there. And
Right.
Trey Lance is there, and Detroit has him like right around there. They could definitely take him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Carolina's out. You know Carolina's out when they traded for Sam Darnold.
I don't think they go quarterback at number 7. I think they're definitely probably there's going to be a lot of great talent that falls because there's going to be a run of quarterbacks. And I think Carolina's going to be looking to take the best play. Like, a lot of times we say BPA, best player available. I think Carolina really is best player available.
That's what I had him doing in my mock draft when I hadn't taken Kyle Pitts. Denver is definitely in contention, but it all depends if they think Drew Lock can still compete. Because the problem with Drew Lock has been he's been injury prone and he's been inconsistent. But if Denver thinks that he can finally stay healthy and be consistent, they might stick with him for another season, or they could just draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I think Denver is a little bit of a wild card. I think they're probably not going to go quarterback, just knowing how
Denver so many
has
needs.
worked.
They do have so many
needs.
Right.
So I think they definitely could, but they don't necessarily have to.
New England is definitely a possibility. I mean, they only have Newton on the 1-year contract. You could definitely see New England. Again, I haven't taken quarterback in my mock draft, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I did misspeak a lot earlier in this. I said the football team picking at 9. They're picking at 19.
I thought you said 19. My bad.
Yeah, I said 9. That's the Broncos pick. They're picking at 19. So I just wanted to correct that mistake. I still think they could pick a quarterback if a quarterback falls.
Well, they need they do need a quarterback. They absolutely need a quarterback because Ron Fitzpatrick, I mean, he's in his late 30s. And do you really trust him to get through a whole season as the starter? I wouldn't at this point.
Probably not. He's going to have a little bit of Fitz magic, a little bit of Fitz tragic.
So yeah, I think could definitely take a quarterback. New England could take a quarterback. Maybe if somebody falls, Pittsburgh as a replacement for Roethlisberger, but that's a big maybe. That's a big maybe.
I would agree. I think for whatever reason, Pittsburgh has been pretty QB adverse for the past couple of years, despite the glaringly obvious signs that they need to get someone and develop them. That's not a Mason Rudolph or a Josh Dobbs. I mean, none of those guys were really going to be development future starter guys. But they've stayed away from quarterbacks. So I think they stayed away from quarterbacks. I think they could, but I think they're probably going to go another position. Which I mean, as a Ravens fan, I'm fine with that. Let them not have a QB situation in the next couple of years. I'm fine with that.
The one more team. I'm not saying first round, definitely not happening. But maybe later in the draft, like day 2, New Orleans.
I think that's interesting. I honestly I don't see them going quarterback because for whatever reason, Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. I know that big contract they gave him, most of that is voidable, so it's not really that big of a deal. They also have Jameis Winston on deck, which, I mean, I don't get what's going on with their quarterback situation. But it doesn't seem like...
Neither do I. That's the only reason I'm putting them on there.
Yeah.
We don't know, but, Sean Payton has always had a plan.
That's very true. Maybe I don't see it happening, but also I don't know what's going on with their quarterback situation, so who knows?
All right.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, there's a couple other teams that could use a quarterback, but I don't see any of them dying for a quarterback.
I mean, some teams could use some backups, but
right.
That's going to be 5th, 6th, 7th, even undrafted.
Right, exactly.
All right. That was us talking about the 2021 quarterback class. Thank you, Sam, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we are going to be working on my final mock draft very soon. I'm going to put that up before the draft. I'm not sure when, but that will be put up before the draft. And we may work on some draft grades after that. That sound like fun?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I love doing the annual mock draft every year with you, John. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys. See you next time.